Hey, all you burners out there, this is WEEDMAN420 with the WEEDMAN420 Chronicles. How are my burners doing out there tonight? We got Mrs. Weedman in the house again for the third time. How you doing, Mrs. Weedman?
Hello, I'm well.
And we got a special guest. You've heard me mention her a couple times on this podcast, Little Weed Girl, but we call her O-Dog. How you doing, O-Dog? First time on the podcast. How you doing?
I'm pretty good.
Can you tell us why we call you O-Dog?
I got a little fire inside of me.
So where did the O-Dog come from?
My teenage angst days.
There's
To
that.
say the least.
And the angst is no more?
The angst will always be there.
So this is a family affair. I mean, all the family's been on this podcast now. Just so you might have heard, I was just ripping on the Rick and Morty bong, trying a brand new strain I've never tried before from a brand new cultivator, which I've never even heard of, called Shelby County Community Service out of Shelbyville, Illinois. This is a true indica, which I'm excited about because this is an indica podcast. We love our indica here. And this one's called Best Friend OG. I wonder how best friend this will be for me. So I'm looking forward to trying and getting baked on this. And it is 25.4% THCA. A little bit of THC with a total of 26.13% THC. No CBD in this, but I'll let you guys know in a few minutes how it hits. It's kind of a cool packaging. It actually is looks like a doctor pill, which you get at a pharmacy, pill box, a pill container, right? Kind of cool. It's pink for medical. It's got the child proofing cap on it. It is got, what I like about this, it tells about the terpenes, which is pretty sweet. It's got limonene and B-micrine, and I'm going to butcher this like I always do every name, but B-caryophyllene. Some of the terpenes you've heard us talk on these podcasts before, but I'm interested to see how this reacts in a couple minutes here, and I'll probably rip the bong a couple more times, but pretty excited. Hopefully everybody's 420 was great. Our 420 episode was really awesome. Thanks for listening to that. And then Rick and Morty was last night. All hail Rick and Morty, the new episode. It was pretty fun. And also today is May 4th, so may the 4th be with you all if you're a Star Wars geek like I am. I've been watching this new show on Netflix. I watched a couple episodes, but the episode that I really liked is it's called The Midnight Gospel with Duncan Trussell. He's a comedian. He also has a podcast. The first episode, they talk about cannabis and they talk about psychedelics and they talk about the different feelings you get. The one thing that took me on this episode was Duncan Trussell talking to Dr. Drew, and it's actually kind of funny. It's a funny episode. Dr. Drew plays the president. He's like this little guy that couldn't walk, and there's a zombie apocalypse going on, and Dr. Drew's killing zombies while they're talking about cannabis and psychedelics and the feelings you get. And they also talk a little bit about pharmaceutical drugs, too, and how bad it is for you. It was pretty interesting, but it's very hard to watch because you're trying to listen to what they're talking about, but the episode is so trippy that you're paying attention to the graphics and what's going on, so you have to like rewatch the episodes a couple times to get it. But I'm not going to go into any more of this. What I want to say is what Duncan Trussell said about paranoia and cannabis, and I'm going to agree with him on this. And what he said was, it's not that you are paranoid when you smoke cannabis. It's your brain trying to let you know you need to figure out your problems that you're going through in your brain. I thought that was pretty interesting. Mm-hmm. You watched a little bit of it with me. What do you think, Mrs. Weedman and O-Dog? You watched the first episode too. What do you think? Think he's right?
Yeah, I thought it was great, and I've definitely been there, so I could say I agree.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Like, I guess I've never stepped back and thought of it that way, that, you know, obviously they're legitimate thoughts that you're having, but now they are kind of filtered by marijuana. So you might be looking at them differently or looking at them more intensely and evaluating them a little differently. Like, you can't get out of that thought at that moment. So it is interesting to think about that you need to just walk through it and feel it. And like I've said before, I think that once you get to understand the feelings of marijuana and that you're going to come out on the other side, when you get into those moments where you're a little too high and you feel too paranoid, once you're comfortable with it, yeah, you really can just ride it out and think about those things.
Yeah, I was practicing since I watched that first episode. I really let my mind go and not really try to stop the thoughts. I just let my head and my brain think it. And usually I solve the world's issues late at night when you fall asleep. I'm like late up, sometimes 1, 2 o'clock in the morning thinking I can figure out the world. But it is. I tested it out since I watched that first episode. It's really, really exploring the mind and letting myself work out my problems. And you know what? I've been waking up every morning feeling a lot better. Instead of letting me go down the rabbit going, holy fuck, I'm fucked up. Did I smoke too much weed? Holy shit, do I need to go for a walk? Do I need some fresh air? All that stuff. I don't think it's really paranoia. I think it's just because we've talked about this on a lot of episodes. Cannabis heightens your senses. Taste, smell, touch. What are other senses? Hearing. You know, some people have all sensitivities to certain things, and on cannabis, I notice that, especially my smell and my taste buds. But I'm really exploring my mind, and you should let your mind go. Let it go into it and see what happens. Try to let your brain is a very powerful thing in your mind, and let it go. Maybe you'll figure the world out one day and figure out your problems. And I'm glad you all agree with me on this. Something challenging that's going to happen here with more and more states opening recreational, and that's going to be the job market. Employers, basically, what are they going to do? Are they going to end drug testing on cannabis? A lot of states and some companies already are. This is going to be a challenge for employers because employers think people are addicted to cannabis, which I don't feel that way. I don't feel I'm addicted to cannabis at all. I can go a week without it. I don't want to, but I can go weeks without it. I don't know if I don't believe, and I've talked about this before, that cannabis is the gateway drug. I've talked to people who are hooked on other drugs, and they didn't like cannabis, so they went to something different. Cannabis isn't for everybody, right? How do you feel about employers? I mean, O-Dog and Mrs. Weedman, how do you feel about employers, and what do you think is going to happen with as more and more states happen? You think companies are going to stop?
I think that companies are going to have to establish a set of standards, much like alcohol on the job or any other sort of prescription medication that might interfere with their cognitive abilities and their ability to stay safe in the workplace. So I think it really depends on the field of work. If you're in manufacturing, do you want the guy on the line next to you high? I don't know. There's some people that can do like high-level thinking and functioning while they're really high. I personally can't. I partake in more of a social way, like I would with alcohol. But there are people that can wake and bake. They can function at a high level. There's people that run companies and can run companies at a high level, stoned all day long. So I think it's just going to be profession based. You know, do you want your surgeon high? Maybe not. But like if you were dealing with some other profession where like fine motor skills and super critical thinking are in play, there's obviously going to have to be some protocols and some strategies on how they go about that.
I'll give a perfect example. O-Dog, just graduating college. I've mentioned that on this podcast before. How do you feel gonna have to go into the workforce and what your career is going to be, and you get drug tested, whether you smoke or smoking cannabis or not? How did you feel it's something that should be done, or do you think it's not? It's cannabis. Everybody does it. It's legal in most states. It's medical. How do you feel?
I think it's really tricky, and I think there's a lot of things that go into it. I don't know. I personally wouldn't be able to smoke and go to work, so I don't think I would really have to worry about it. But on the terms of getting tested just to get a job, I don't think, like, if I smoke a few times here and there, like at the end of the day, I don't think that deters if I'm a good employee or not. But it's harder to tell if someone could be abusing it or doing too much of it. Like you could kind of tell more with alcohol or another like harder drug or something.
True, I agree. And as laws are changing and marijuana uses continue to change, it creates challenges for employers.
And I also think that they're going to have to come to some sort of testing that's more accurate on the timeline of when you've consumed. Because if I partake in smoking marijuana in the evening in my free time, in the morning, it has no relevance on my functioning. It has no bearing on how I operate during the day. So if I went to work in the morning and my employer says, hey, we're going to test you today, and it shows that I'm positive for THC, well, it's really irrelevant. it has no impact on how I'm going to work as an employee. So until they can figure out a test that says that this level of THC is in your blood right now, that impairs your ability to work properly, I think it's very hard for them to take the drug testing away in some careers or to add it in other careers.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like it's like alcohol or like, again, harder drugs where you are facing the consequences the next day. You know, you smoke, you wake up, you're fine. You're not drinking, waking up hungover, and that's not impairing your work. So,
yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's just something employers are gonna have to look at. And some states are federally controlled. Some states are governed by the local municipalities. So it's gonna be really weird and interesting to see what happens in the next 5, 10, 15 years with employers and who's gonna stop. And that leads me to the next topic, and that is Cresco Labs. Besides being one of the biggest cultivators in the United States, also was one of the largest dispensary owners in the United States. But here in Illinois, their employees push to unionize, not only just in the cultivation out in Joliet, but in their dispensaries. And it all happens because of the C-19, the COVID. They're saying it's physically impossible to social distance in shops. It says the bud tenders work there, and they want to get in the union. They want to make sure their rights are protected. Now, I believe in unions. I believe if people want to join a union, they have the right to do that. I believe that you have the choice. Okay? Here's the thing. If dispensaries now are in the union and bud tenders have to pay and get into the union, what does that leave for the medical patients like myself and for caretakers and not so much rec, but more so for medical? Is that going to up the price in cannabis for us, especially people that are on a tight budget? I don't know. I'm just asking you, throwing out there for people to think before you join a union. Hopefully the dispensaries will see that as being protecting their workers, but also protect the medical cannabis users.
I think that maybe it's a possibility that as profits increase in the cultivation centers and the dispensaries, and they have more fluid income, they maybe can increase the benefits to their employees without affecting the end user, without affecting the purchaser.
Which is somebody like myself who needs it.
Right now they may not have the ability to do that because there just aren't enough people purchasing. The business is still kind of rolling out. But there may be a point along the way where profits are high enough and they can go back and do the union wages and give the bud tenders and all the dispensary and cultivation center employees the benefits that they're looking for and the protection that they're looking for, while still keeping the bottom line cost to the user where it's already at.
Yeah, and I mean, I really want to protect the workers, of course, because they're serving us the medical needs. So we want to make sure they're protected. So hopefully they get this stuff worked out and they don't raise prices of cannabis. And that was the big thing for me. Don't raise prices. They're perfect where they are.
Some might argue with that.
Yeah, true. Legal marijuana states had fewer vaping and related lung injuries. Some studies are finding, and we told you we'd keep you updated on this all the time since our Do You Vape Bro episode, and we talked about the vitamin E and the bad tainted vapes cartridges that were coming from China and the black market. Here's some good things to know about and what they're finding. People in states that they're finding it's recreational cannabis is legal were significantly less likely to experience vaping-related lung injuries and issues than those in states where cannabis is prohibited and buying black market. That's good to hear, and we've been saying it from day one. Know where you get your product from. Go to a dispensary and buy your vape cartridges because you know what they're putting in it.
O-Dog, just coming out of the whole college scene, you just graduated from college in December. You were probably at a handful of college parties, maybe? And did you see that? Like a lot of people using black market cartridges to vape marijuana?
I mean, I didn't really go around asking what people were smoking.
I know, but I mean, you know that in Wisconsin it's not legal.
Based it
right?
off like my friends, and I really don't know if like people went out of their way to like ask where they were getting their cartridges from. But I do feel like I've like ever since all this new info and research has come out with that against like black market cartridges and stuff, I have seen like a decline in the use of them. Like I feel like a lot of my friends don't smoke them as much as they used to.
That's good.
But you're also in a state that cannabis isn't legal either, so they're probably buying black market, not knowing where they're getting it from, unless they know it's coming from a dispensary. So that might be a reason, because they don't know where it's coming from.
Yeah, definitely.
Get your ass together, Wisconsin. Get your shit together up there, and make sure you get recreational and medical, so your people stop smoking bad vape cartridges.
They got a lot to figure out before they get to weed.
So, but it's good that they're finding out that buying cartridges from dispensaries, recreational or medical, that they're finding that people aren't getting those lung issues and getting that vitamin E acetate and all that stuff. So know where you're getting your products. So that's good news here. Thanks for the info, girls, on that. I appreciate that. Here's something to really know. I've been to a lot of dispensaries, recreational, one medical. You've been to a couple, Mrs. Weedman, right?
I have, yes.
Dog, you haven't been to any yet, right?
No.
Okay. So
You sound so sad about that.
it's an experience. How did you feel when you went to your first dispensary, which was the one, you're my caretaker, but outside of going to one on your own, by yourself?
So I went to two different states that were each recreational states. So I've been to dispensaries in those states, and one of which is Vegas. You know, it's been recreational there for a bit, and they've got some pretty large dispensaries. And of course, it was beautiful. It's Vegas, so everything is bigger and sparklier and shinier and louder, right? So it's pretty. You know, you get in, it's very state of the art and cool. There was a bonus, being a caretaker, a card holder. I got shuffled over to a different line. I didn't have to wait in line with all the commoners. And I had my own bud tender right away, who escorted me over to the side. And I think I paid a different tax. There was definitely a different price point. I had like a tax discount. But what I felt discouraged about, of course, the bud tender said, "What are you looking for? What are you trying to do? Like, what's your goal here?" And I was traveling with a bunch of friends, and a lot of them hadn't smoked marijuana in a very long time, but everyone wanted to try while we were there, you know, when in Rome. And so, of course, this place was amazing, and it was, you know, jewelry case after jewelry case, display after display, and everything's laid out in there in the packaging. I'm a packaging. I want to see the packaging. I like the pretty artwork. I buy wine that way too. I like a pretty label. So I of course, my eye was drawn toward packaging that I like. But what was frustrating a little bit was that there's no prices. You see all the beautiful packaging, and you don't know what anything is. And so the bud tender is just asking you, what are you trying to achieve? And they then go and say, here's A, B, and C. What would you like? Or do you want more? Do you want A, B, C, and D? And so you're just picking.
No
you've got this whole. I'm like,
E?
no.
E at
Well,
all.
there was probably E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, but they're trying to narrow it down for me and get me out the door. And so I felt a little bit rushed at that point, because I think their objective is to make the experience quick and get you what you need. Get the next person in. And that's all great, but I wanted the experience. I wanted to look at the other pretty packaging and know why that wasn't the right thing for me. And so it was just kind of frustrating. The next state that I was in that was also recreational, much smaller dispensary, and that guy, I think, was so high. And he was on like a lot of sativa, so he was talking 500 miles an hour, and he had whipped out so many things that he thought were just perfect for me and spewed out so much information so fast. I guess I came away from both experiences thinking I didn't learn anything. I was handed something, and I was given something and told that these are going to do what I'm trying to achieve. I was vacationing, so I wanted a sativa. I didn't want to be super uppity, but I didn't want to be sleepy. I wanted to have some giggles and laughs and fun, and I didn't want to be.
You did bring home some
I brought
joints home though from Seattle. Those things were the shit.
Those were great. So I ended up with good product. I'm not complaining about that at all. I had some amazing product, but I didn't know what I was having. Like, I didn't know why they were amazing. They were just good product. So that's my takeaway, is that you part of the process as a consumer is that you want to learn and you want to know more. And my takeaway is that I didn't learn anything. I was just given something.
Yeah, and that's what I feel too. Oh, dog, you're in the service industry. You're in the service industry. What brings people back to the restaurant that you waited tables at?
Well, they say it's all about the full-on experience, the full package. So, I mean, you said the looks of the place, the interior of it, and that obviously attracted you. And then the product of what you're getting, so you said that was good too. And then the service, and
Service always brings people back.
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we can all say we've had great service and very poor service and mediocre service, but if the product's good, you're going to keep coming back also, maybe. But if you continually get bad service, you might draw a line at some point.
Definitely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so dispensaries out there, I love going. It's an experience to me, but the service needs to be, I think, part of it. And I know some bud tenders I've been to, they don't rush you, but they don't know everything, and I don't maybe not expect them to know everything.
Yeah, that would be hard.
But I think they need to, most dispensaries and need to champion accessibility, making sure that, as everything is not equal, out there.
I just had a light bulb in my brain.
Ding, ding,
Sorry,
ding, 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 ding.
When you go to Walgreens and you pick up your prescription, you get a little information sheet.
There you go.
Ding, 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 ding,
Yeah.
ding.
But
There
I
you
mean,
go.
if
Why
you
don't we have a little information sheet?
like I can't say that I'm the best server ever, I could be better, but if I don't know something, and if these bud tenders don't know something, the willingness to like find it out for you, like, are they going out of their way to get you what you need?
Some
and the
do,
info
some
that
don't.
You need? Yeah, and that could be done anywhere.
Right.
Well, I will say both experiences that I had, the guys were extremely knowledgeable. They knew. I mean, it was like, boom. Like within seconds, they went and grabbed stuff here, there, and everywhere and brought it to me and said, this is what you want. I mean, them having the knowledge was not the issue. It was me getting the knowledge.
Yeah, but
so
there
that I
might
could
be some people who want to be in and out.
Yes.
And
But
like, are
right,
like, let me
that's
get what I
true.
need and let me go.
Okay,
Right.
so back to the
There's-
whole
there's-
Walgreens prescription paper.
Right,
ad.
but there's some people that go on their menus
Right?
online and research and do their research before they come to exactly what they want. But you want to cultivate connoisseurs. You want people to be knowledgeable, and you want to teach them, because you might have somebody that knows their shit, that studies cannabis and knows what they want. They go on, but you might have somebody like myself who's not always want to go on the internet and look at stuff. They just want to be suggestive sold and what their needs are. A need, want, and a desire is what most people
That's
do when they
me.
shop.
I'm too indecisive. Choose
Yeah, just-
for me, please.
Right. But you want to make sure you're selling something that is for your need, though. You know, what you're looking for. Maybe you might be indecisive on the strain, but you might have something you're looking to do that with that when you go out, or you're hanging out, or you want to sleep, or you want to think. So you have to just not only just cultivate towards the connoisseurs, but you have to grow your connoisseurs, people who aren't used to cannabis and buying it, especially new people. You have to do that.
Maybe they could have like a way that when you come into the dispensary, if you wanted more of that, a lesson, you have to schedule a time or something. Like I need a half hour to be with my
Some
bud tender.
dispensaries do.
Right.
Some do. More
Okay.
the medical side of things, not so much recreational, but on the medical they do. I know they offered me the first time coming in, do you want to sit down and talk? What are your needs? And they did ask me certain questions on the form. I didn't go into the consultation room, but they do. They do that.
Oh, so that's
for
good
medical.
to know. And for some
That's
people
good.
that
Yeah,
don't
I don't know
that.
if every dispensary in Illinois does that. I know some in other states are like that, but I think a lot of people are willing your first time, but going more and more and more, you do create a following. There were specific bud tenders I was looking for every time I went in because I knew them. They were knowledgeable, but there was days they weren't working. I would go to somebody new, and I didn't feel the same way. So I think some people do look for that same, like when you build a following when you wait tables. People come in and they ask for your section.
Right?
I had that.
Yes, they do.
Oh, I did.
So-
Oh, yeah. I
Yeah.
built the following.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to make sure you also have proper inventory too, and it's very hard nowadays in some states, especially Illinois, because there's not enough recreational right now, and flowers being sold out like that. So you got to have the correct inventory. I think you also need to make sure your staff is well trained. I don't think you just hire people because they're weed enthusiasts. I think you need to train them if they are weed enthusiasts and they want to work for a dispensary. You need to make sure the staff is well knowledgeable. And then the last thing I think most dispensaries need to do, and this is a good one for all of us in this because we've been talking leading up to this, is listen to your customer.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Unfortunately, the customer's always right.
Not always, but yeah, always.
You know, it's very hard to say if the customer's always right or not because he could be. I've waited tables, I bartended, and that customer was absolutely, positively, 100% wrong.
They're usually wrong.
Yeah.
You still need to make sure they
Yes.
feel good,
Right.
You know, and you got to make them think they're.
You got to
right.
you have to convince them that they're right.
100%.
You are so right.
That's
Here's a
skill
slice of
itself.
pie.
So dispensaries, keep on doing what you're doing. Hopefully you take some advice from the WEEDMAN420 and Mrs. Weedman and O-Dog on this because we've been in the service industry, all of us, for a long time, so we know what we'd like. And hopefully that's how you'll grow clientele. Really cool. I know a lot of people out there know who High Times Magazine is. They've been around forever. One of the strains that a grower I knew back in the early 90s actually made it to the High Times top 10 called Dr. Who's. This is back in the early 90s. That's when WeedMan helped him out a little bit. But they are actually going public. You can buy stocks in High Times Magazine.
Cool.
That's pretty dope.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, look at that. The other thing they did is they made a big time buy play for dispensaries. They bought 13 of them in California.
Really?
Yeah, good for them.
Yeah.
High Times been around a long time. I know a lot of people don't read magazines that much anymore.
I guess I'm almost surprised more that they weren't already in the dispensary game. Do they own a cultivation center?
Not that I know of.
Huh.
I just know they bought 13 dispensaries and they probably invested, but they don't forget they did the High
Yeah.
Times Cannabis Cup. I mean, they've done really well for themselves in the reading world. You know, magazines, internet, all that stuff. They host. They've grown the cannabis world. They interview some of the best people in the world: cultivators, stars, people who smoke cannabis for I don't know, 20 plus years. So good for them. Hopefully, I get to visit one of the dispensaries. Here's something funny. You guys know some nurses in your life?
Yeah.
I do. Shout out.
Shout out to the nurses.
Mm-hmm.
You want to shout out to them specifically?
I don't know if I should say their name.
Do they have nicknames?
I have two close friends that
Do they have nicknames that they would know?
No.
No?
Girls. Just say girls.
Just say girls.
They know who you are.
Shout out to the nurses that you know. Oh, dog. What would you say, though, to one of your nurses' friends that lived in Canada and tried to sneak, I'm going to say sneak, 150 pounds of cannabis over the border into the United States and saying they were an essential worker. They were working for to help COVID in the United States. They were coming over to help out, but they were actually sneaking 150 pounds of cannabis over the border. What would you say to them?
Say, but why?
But why?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
150
yeah.
pounds.
So wait a minute.
A lot of weed.
This woman went from the U.S. to Canada?
No, she came. She was a
From
Canadian
Canada.
nurse, and she was heading to Detroit Hospital to help treat patients infected with COVID-19.
But
Instead, she wound up making an appearance in a federal courthouse.
oops.
Oh, oops. The reason? Pot. Lots and lots and lots and lots of pot. Terry Lynn Maxwell is now facing charges of conspiracy and possession with intent to distribute marijuana after U.S. Customs and Border Protection agents inspected her vehicle at the United States and Canada border and allegedly found more than 150 pounds of cannabis.
Allegedly. Maybe it was oregano.
Was she actually a nurse?
Yeah, actually a nurse.
Was she trying to sell it to COVID patients?
No.
Or was she trying
Nope.
to
She
just
was
make a quick
she was
bang?
bringing 150 pounds of some good Toronto cannabis because don't forget they're
Yeah.
recreational legal in that whole, and there's tons of cultivators. So she that knew somebody that needed to sell some because it's it could have been some underground growers. 150 pounds. If you're selling
That sounds stupid.
just say if she's selling it for $1,000, that's $200,000 worth of cannabis. She
yeah, it just
has,
sounds stupid though.
you know, probably close
In
to
this day and age.
1,500 a pound. She was bringing back some cashola.
And
So-
she wasn't pretending to be a nurse. That wasn't just her pretend.
And you can find this in the Detroit News. She
That's
was in a
funny.
lab coat, some nursing scrubs, and 150 pounds of weed.
well,
they found in
anyone
her
can
truck.
buy a lab coat and nursing scrubs.
So
thing
here's
is
the
a
thing, though.
ploy.
She's facing 20 years in prison.
Dummy.
Shout out to all the essential nurses out there. Don't sneak in 150 pounds of cannabis from Canada. Okay, we need you to help the COVID-19 patients.
And thank you for doing so.
Yes, thank you, nurses. It was pretty funny, though, when I read that article. I thought it was funny. Cannabis, what does cannabis do to you? Does it make you sleepy? Does it wake you up? Does it make you mellow? Does it make you think? They're doing some studies which I've been reading about, and we've talked in episodes. It's not just about sativas and indicas. It's the terpenes and terpenoids that are in cannabis and cannabinoids and CBD and THC. But why weed can make you do all sorts of things to the brain. And we all know smoking cannabis makes most people sleepy. It's probably about 75% of why I smoke cannabis at night is to help me go to bed. But there's cannabis that makes me run and do laps around the house and makes Mrs. Weedman absolutely crazy.
Yes, too much sativa is not good for weedman. Oh my God.
As you all know, there's some cannabis strains that are a do not smoke list for WEEDMAN420. And Mrs. Weedman has them in a journal going, you are not allowed to buy that one. An interesting study conducted by Eric Morello Rodriguez and colleagues from these guys are from Mexico and from the United States, and they came together and they're trying to investigate the effects of CBD and to specific regions of the brain. And they tested this on mice, and they test everything on mice. So they're just trying to figure out what cannabis does to the brain. Mrs. Weedman, what does cannabis do to your brain?
Well, of course, it depends on the strain. I think that I could smoke a sativa or an indica, and if I'm in a particular environment, like I'm at a concert or we're out and about, it doesn't make me sleepy. There might be a moment of a little sleepiness, but you get past it. But on the other hand, if you're home and it's, you've got the lights dim, you got just like a movie on, you're chilling out, I think that you have that tendency to feel the sleepiness. Same with munchies. I feel like the whole munchie thing, I think a little bit is a mindset. It might be strain related, but sometimes I think that it's like we just associate snacking out with snacks with smoking. And when you really stop and think about it, it's like, I'm not really hungry. It's just that I smoked and I put the two and two together. So it's like my excuse to snack. I don't know. O-Dog, you have any opinion?
I don't know. I think it makes my mind feel just about everything, and I can't predict what I'm gonna get when I do it, and that's why I've been kind of taking a little.
She took a little bit of a break, which is fine. If you need to take a break from cannabis, and sometimes you do. I don't, but there's some people I know that do take breaks.
There's definitely strains that make me feel super creative, and I get these crazy ideas, and I feel like I could write a book, and I've solved every problem in the world, and I've discovered I have kind of the tendency to have a creative mind and to get these ideas. But when I'm smoking, I feel like they're that much more intense and they just feel so solidified. Like, this is it. This is the next best thing in the world. I discover things. But then sometimes I'm too lazy to get up and get a piece of paper. Because the thought of having to write it all down is overwhelming.
With these tests that they're doing, they're injecting into the brain and they're releasing the hormone through serotonin, because that's what gives you the effects sometimes of when you do cannabis. And they're trying to figure out why it makes you sleep or why it makes you awake, which I think is kind of cool. If you want to read this article, everybody, just to read, I'm not going to go into this more and more. I just thought it was really, really interesting. It says it makes you sleep. It wakes you up. It's on cannabis.net. And it makes you sleep. It makes you wake up. A neuroscience explains why we can do both in the brain. Posted by Lemon Knowles on Wednesday, April 29, 2020. And why it makes some people sleepy and feel energized. I suggest you read it. It's very interesting. I believe in this article only because I can attest to when I smoke different stuff, I can run around the house. I drive Mrs. Weedman crazy, or I go relax and chillax, which I love more than anything. There's also stuff like I was talking about that Spectra, that Blackberry Web I smoke. It's a 2-to-1 CBD to THC, and I get into cleaning or I get into doing something, and my mind just wants to finish it and succeed at it. That's the kind of strain I really love during the day. And I've talked about this strain many times on this podcast. To me, Mrs. Weedman, we do chores around the house, and one Saturday I was smoking the Spectra 2-to-1, And how well did I clean that toilet, Mrs.
You
Weedman?
scrubbed that toilet. There was not an inch of that toilet that wasn't shining. It wasn't that dirty to start off with, but you went to town.
Oh man, I absolutely loved cleaning the toilet that day.
Yeah.
It was fucking rad. I was into it, and I said, "Oh, there's a little mold around this edge over here. How do I get that?" She goes, "Oh, there's a dirty toothbrush in the bottom. Get that." And I scrubbed the shit out of the toilet, but my mind was so focused on that job at that time. I fucking loved it. I loved it. So I understand. And this strain,
It wasn't
guys,
an old dirty toothbrush. Let's
Well,
just
whatever.
clarify. It was just an old
It was an old
toothbrush
toothbrush.
that we
Look,
wouldn't be using orally anymore.
it was for cleaning stuff.
Yes, just for cleaning.
Right. It's for cleaning grout and stuff like that.
By the way, have you ever seen someone so passionate about cleaning a toilet? I don't think
I
so.
was. I was fucking cleaning.
You were so proud of it
I
when you were
was.
done.
I was like looking at myself. It
You
was
were so
shiny.
happy.
I saw myself in that toilet bowl. It's not looking in the water. The toilet seat was down.
But then there are other times where you may have a strain that takes you like even to like a higher notch of like an elevated energy level, and that's insanity. And then on the other end, like I can't
If
be
you
around
know,
you
you
in that
know.
moment. It's like I don't know you. And then there's the other end of the spectrum.
Hold on. I wonder if there's many wives that say that about their husbands when they smoke a certain
Oh,
cannabis strain.
Lordy.
I just can't be around you anymore.
I think
yeah.
it might just be you.
Yeah. If we've been out like at a show and you've had a couple beers and too much sativa, it's like
I mean, says you. Some people might think he's
Oh,
really fun
yes.
that way.
yeah. But I just I
Thanks,
have to-
O-Dog, for sticking up for Pops. I love it. Thanks.
On the other end of the spectrum, though, if you have really, really heavy indica and you have too much of it, your blood pressure drops so much that you start shivering.
We're going to talk about
Yeah,
that.
sorry.
Mhm.
I'm
we're
jumping
gonna
ahead.
No, that's okay. We
Yeah.
will talk about that, and that's a really good thing because I actually just talked to a friend of mine about the blood pressure. He had no idea why he would get the shakes. I'm not
I
the
didn't
only one.
either. I just found that out.
Yeah,
the
we'll
other
talk
day.
about that in a little bit and why people get the
I
shakes.
shake like a chihuahua when I'm sometimes, so the more you know.
So she bites like a chihuahua and she shakes like a chihuahua and she's cold.
Scrappy.
I guess I found my spirit animal.
I have to say something before we go on to the next topic here. This strain is really good.
Yeah.
It's an indica, but it's a talkative indica, and you've heard us talk about some indicas that make it this way, but it's very nicely body high. So, for my first time ever smoking them, I'm gonna give a little props to Shelby County Community Services. That's a weird
That's funny.
name
Yeah.
for a cannabis cultivator.
It's funny. I like it.
It is. It's nice. It's just weird, you know.
They're trying to be like a real.
Yeah.
I get it. Medical.
Yeah.
The packaging is cool. There's a little family, like two parents and a little kid on
It's
the
cute.
bottle. Yeah,
It's
it's cute.
Weed
pink.
for the family.
Yep, weed for the All right. We are sitting here with little weed girl, our daughter, first time on the podcast. We're going to go back in time, and I wish Paulie was here, little weed boy was here also, because this would have been a perfect conversation to have with both of our children. How do you talk to your teens about cannabis nowadays since it's legal? And we had this discussion earlier during dinner, how we were going to talk about this with all of our podcast listeners, and probably some are moms and dads that have teenage kids and wondering how do I talk to them about it? This is going to be probably one of my favorite topics because we do have O-Dog here. And I'm going to take this and, as I always do, give this topic to Mrs. Weedman because it's
Thanks.
right up her alley.
Thanks. So, yeah, talking to your kids about drugs. I think we visited
Wait.
this topic.
Cannabis is not a drug.
Well, right. Well, but yes, but I'm flashing back to when our kids were teenagers.
There you go.
It was still a drug, right? It was
Back
still
in
the
time.
gateway drug, and they did the DARE program, and Officer Friendly said, "Don't do marijuana."
My essay won DARE, and I read it at the ceremony, so you should be proud.
See, I taught you something. And then you smoked weed when you got into
We'll talk
college,
about
right? So anyway, raising our kids, we talked about this on my first visit to the podcast, and I just talked about how I felt about alcohol and weed. But I guess, things obviously have changed, and I thought I was doing a service to my kids by telling them just stay away from them, period. No drugs, no drugs, no drugs. And I didn't embrace marijuana because at that time I just didn't. And obviously, as I've learned more and more about it and embraced it, I do have a different opinion about it, and I understand it, and I think it's wonderful. But there's people out there right now raising children in a time when weed is legal, and it is part of casual conversation now. It is in many households. Not that it wasn't before, but it's in households differently. It's more present, it's more talked about, it's more visible. So I think today's conversation with a teenager would be much different than even 10 years ago. When our kids were teenagers and starting
Definitely
to go
10
out to
years
parties.
ago.
I mean, yeah.
Even before 2013, anything before 2013, before cannabis became legal.
Well,
in
they were
Illinois.
graduating in
Right.
those years. So, I mean, yeah, 10 years ago, we had a much different conversation. So I was doing the whole, like, advocating along with the DARE officer to don't do drugs. But apparently, there might have been a little exploring, not with other drugs, thankfully, but there may have been a couple experiences with marijuana. Maybe?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's crazy how accessible it is these days for teens. You can Juuls with the cartridges. It's so easy to just grab it and smoke it wherever in your house. It doesn't smell as much. Your parents won't. It's so easy to hide and so easy to get that, like, it's definitely a conversation that you should be having if you didn't already with your teenagers. And
these are the conversations that become unpleasant too, though. Don't forget.
yeah, but do they?
Sex,
I don't think they.
drugs,
Yeah.
alcohol abuse, pop culture become necessary talking points, and it's scary. It's sometimes parents don't know how to talk about that. That's why I'm,
Yeah. I mean, weed has gotten a little bit more lenient, but it's always had such a stigma and a taboo that the only thing that people would know how to educate, I mean, not even educate, just tell youth about drugs is not to do it. And they try to, like, impose a fear into the youth to avoid it. But, we've all been teenagers. We're going to find the drugs. We're going to try the drugs. Majority of us.
A lot of parents simply don't know how to talk to their teens and simply don't even have the conversations with that either, though. Would you agree?
Yeah.
I'm sure. And, I, thinking back to DARE, and then in high school we had health class, whatever, and we talked about drugs, and it was researching all the bad things that they do. And I remember researching LSD for my paper, and I was like, oh wait, this is actually pretty cool. And they're like trying to teach me that it's bad, but I was actually like getting more interested in it. And I don't think making a fear is gonna.
Scare tactics don't work.
No.
War on drugs, the
'Cause it either-
1970s up to today, the DARE program, drug abuse resistance program, if you didn't know what that meant, a lot of them have failed miserably.
Yeah. So, Mom,
Yeah. Well, and what I was thinking too is that back when you guys were in high school, in grade school, and we started to have talks about alcohol, because alcohol I knew was always going to be a part of their life. It was very easy to say, just don't do drugs. I mean, that was just kind of the end of the line. Like, look where they lead you in life. They're bad. They're addictive. You don't want to deal with them. But alcohol is equally bad and addictive and all of those things too. But alcohol is such a part of everyone's life. And so I wanted my kids to understand what alcohol does. I didn't want them to be at parties and be in this situation where they felt like they had to chug, 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 and then be the drunk girl or boy in the corner that's puking and someone has to drag home and leave on the doorstep. So, I mean, really, right? So I just wanted to introduce them, like in European countries, the kids, when they're, 10 and 12 years old, they're going to have a small glass of wine at the table with their family. And so we didn't do that necessarily, but I would say by the time you guys were like juniors in high school, if you wanted to sip the beer and understand a beer, I knew that they were occasionally going out with friends and having drinks. But I just wanted them to understand what alcohol does. Like, hey, if you're going to drink and you're in that situation, have one beer all night long. All anyone cares about at the party is that you're drinking. They're not monitoring how much you're drinking. So I would always tell them, have a beer. So now you have to explore, how do you approach this whole marijuana subject, because now it's equally present everywhere because it's legal. And I would say it's just as present probably in in teen life as alcohol. Would you agree, Olivia?
Yeah, definitely. But like you're saying, yeah, it's just about educating them how to safely do it
Mm-hmm.
rather than trying to make them scared of doing it or them just going into it blindly without really knowing what it is or what it does.
And I've always found that the old cliche comment of, if you smoke weed, you're just going to be a loser and you're just going to be a stoner. I'm sorry, but again, I know a lot of successful people, highly functional people.
We call them burners.
Who smoke weed all the time and function perfectly fine. Marijuana doesn't equate laziness, and marijuana doesn't equate a loser. I mean, some people are just predestined for that. I'm sorry. I mean, there's just people who aren't motivated. There's people all around the world all the time who aren't motivated and have a slothy lifestyle. That's just what they do. It's whatever, that's their thing. And if they smoke weed, it's not the weed that's making that happen. So again, yes, it's educating, it's having the knowledge, having the open conversation with your kids. They're going to explore it. And of course, not every kid is going to explore it, but a lot of kids are going to explore it. So talk to them about it.
How did you feel that we did talking to you about it? Would you rather, as you got older, we talked more openly about it? When you graduated high school, we were more open, even probably maybe your senior year, but during your younger years, like 13, 14, 15, how did we do as parents talking to you about it?
Well, I mean, you guys tried to say don't do it, it's bad or whatever, and that didn't make me want to stop from trying it. That just made me want to hide it from you guys because I didn't want to get in trouble.
I hid it from you guys too, so
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I'm a hypocrite.
Yeah, I didn't even know that you were getting high. I had no idea.
Yeah, because I didn't want to get in trouble.
Neither did I.
So, Mrs. Weedman is the family police. I am Principal Skinner.
Sorry,
Come into my
this is a
office.
good laugh one right here. This is a good strain for laughing. Oh, my ears are hot. Wow, this is a good one. So, as parents, I mean, teenagers of all ages and genders, and they just have to understand it. I think nowadays, because we're seeing it on the news. I remember when it went legal here in Illinois, January 1, it was on the news for months. So kids are seeing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think nowadays parents have to be honest with their kids and what cannabis is. Why is it medically in some states? Why is it legal? They need to be educated on the benefits of it now. The old days of saying it's bad for you is over. We need to let our teenage kids know about cannabis. Hey, listen, your brain develops until you're 25 years old, okay? We're not going to tell you not to do it, because if we're doing it, we're not going to tell you not to do it. We're going to tell you to be careful to do it, just like alcohol. Nowadays, you taught your kids alcohol. Hey, if you're going to a party, call me. I'll pick you up anytime, anywhere, any place. No questions asked. We'll come and get you if you're drunk. If you're baked and you can't drive, we'll come pick you up. No questions asked. You have to understand it now, because it's culturally, it's accepted in a lot of states. A lot of people are accepting it because of medical benefits. And now your kids are going to go to parties, and like we talked about in other episodes, they're not going to go there for drinking. There's going to be a tray of, or you can't say a cooler, but you could say a box full of 20, 30 strains, and people are just going to have bowls and bongs on that instead of drinking.
Honestly,
you have to explain it to them.
Yeah, in the big picture of things, I'd rather if my kid was going to want to try to party, I'd rather them be at the weed party than the drinking party.
Yeah, me too. I want to be there,
I
too.
think, I mean, the troubles that transpire at a drinking party are much bigger than those at a weed party.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Here's the thing I think we have to do as parents. We have to get into the art of active listening. Mm-hmm. We have to listen. We have to make sure we understand. We have to become better listeners and not telling our kids what to do. We have to listen to them, and I think we become better parents that way. We also have to show positivity with our kids, our teenage kids, on this. We also have to maybe have some heart-to-heart reflecting with them. If they need to talk and vent, well, we got to have that heart-to-heart talk with them. They're going to want to. If they can't trust us, who can they trust? Right?
Yeah, and I don't want people to think too that we are like advocating that teenagers should be drinking or doing any drugs for that matter.
No,
but
majority of them are. So
Right.
why don't you educate
Right.
them so then they could be smarter in their decision making and make hopefully decisions for themselves about what they want to do.
I think the teenagers and the
And how they do
parents,
it.
Yes.
right? And I think the teenager and the parent need to have open-ended questions throughout the conversation. I think it has to be open. The last thing, and I'm going to say this is have compassion for your
Empathy.
Yeah, empathy.
We've all been a teenager. We all know it. So why wouldn't you have a little more understanding for what your child is going through?
And the biggest thing we have to understand is, as parents, is that because cannabis is appealing, because our teenage kids see it in pop culture everywhere, they see it as being something trendy now. Like it was before, but it was more underground trendy. Now it's above the ground because it's legal.
It's everywhere.
well, I think it's crossed all
everywhere.
cultures now. It's not just in a certain like genre of music or movies. It's everywhere. It's Andy Cohen, for all of you 40 somethings out there that watch all of the Housewives shows. Andy Cohen has been doing on Bravo TV. He does like Skype talks with different people from all of his TV shows on
Right.
Bravo. And 9 times out of 10, if that show is on in the background and I'm doing something in the kitchen, there's conversations about like, do you smoke weed? Do you smoke weed? I mean, it's just it's all genres. It's all cultures.
Here's
it's
the
all
thing,
ages.
and here's what we have to understand as parents. Okay, they're gonna feel pressure, and they're gonna feel anxiety and stress because their friends are gonna go, "It's legal now. You can do it. You're not gonna get in any trouble." So that's a way. So that now teenager has has it in her head or his head or her head going, "Oh, it is. I'm not going to get in any trouble." So I think we have to be understanding on this time more so than ever before. I think we have to make sure that conversations are starting earlier now because it is mainstream. Oh, dog, what do you think? Ending on it. I'll let you end on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a parent, so I don't really know that level, but I have been through it and I know what I was told and what I went and did anyway. So I just would hope that you're educating your kids so that they can do what's right for them in the moment.
Yeah, and it will be. Not that marijuana wasn't a peer pressure already, but like you're saying, it's just so much more lax now and acceptable that it's going to be more common and more frequent that your kids are exposed to it. And I think just the more that they know and the more that you openly talk with them about it, the more conditioned or capable that they will be of making a good decision about it.
Good decisions, and I want to. This was a good topic. I hope parents out there and teenagers or whoever listens to this, I hope this is a good topic for you. I think it hit heart at home for us for raising two great little weed man and little weed girl, or O-Dog and Polly. I want to say hopefully everyone liked that topic. It's a good one. So, and I'm baked because I just hit that thing 3 times. So I got to give a shout out to some of our international news right now. Lebanon becomes first Arabic nation to legalize cannabis farming. Woohoo! Go Lebanon!
Woohoo!
New Zealand, I talked about this on the last couple episodes. I want to go to New Zealand. It's one of the places and Mrs. Weedman hears a lot. I'm excited because it unveils cannabis legalization blueprint. Finally, New Zealand has unveiled a cannabis legalization plan that voters will decide on later this year. The proposal would set the legal consumption age of 20. Woohoo! Would allow for so-called coffee shops and would permit home grows. Grow your own cannabis if you can. I'm excited. Pass that bill. Vote New Zealand. Let's go. Let's go. Let's go. Get it done. And way to go, Lebanon. As we do our international news. Proud of our international brotherhood and sisterhood out there for keeping cannabis strong. All right. You hear us talk about edibles a lot on this podcast. Okay? Mrs. Weedman makes the finest of edibles that we all love. But you can overdose on edibles. I'm one to attest. I was at a wedding and I took too many cushy rolls and my daughter found me hugging the toilet and I was green and I was praying to the floor going, "Go get your mother." I overdosed, and my daughter found me, and it was kind of funny. And she still laughs about it today, so I know it was good. And she ran to go get her mom, and then here comes Mrs. Weedman. What are you doing on the floor? I can't see so good. You can overdose on edibles, but you can't die from them.
No. That was a fun night, though.
That was a fun night.
Yeah.
A good wedding. You cannot die from cannabis. You cannot OD on it. Yes, you will get extremely fucked up, and you will cry to your mom or to your wife like I did, or your daughter like I did. Mrs. Weedman, has this ever happened to you?
Nothing stands out as that. No, I think that I've smoked before and had too much, but I have not had too much on an edible. I've witnessed someone try an edible, and I'm not quite what happened, but she was turning blue a little bit. I mean, like, she was going to pass out. Maybe not blue. She was turning white, and her lips were looking a little blue.
You can puke.
Yeah,
you can
she was
throw
looking
up.
nauseous.
Yes, you can.
She was looking nauseous and faint, and then we got her some water, and she took a few deep breaths, and she came back around. But yeah, so I've witnessed it with you and with a friend, but I haven't.
You were talking
experienced
earlier. We were talking about taking too much. We talked, and I stopped you to go into, because this was the lead way into the section.
Yes.
So you were talking earlier. What else did we mention? Does anyone remember? I'm the only one really baked. But you did talk about something about edibles earlier, or taking too much weed. We were talking about
That you get the shivers.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Yes. We get the shivers. I do obsessionally. Do you want to make fun of me?
Well, wait. O-Dog, have you had a too many
yeah.
edibles kind of experience?
Yeah, but I didn't almost die. I just convinced myself that if I had a baby in the next 5 months that I would be okay and I'd make it work. Yeah, I don't know.
So you were going to have a premature baby, and you'd be
Well,
all right.
Yeah,
5 months.
9 months, I don't know, whatever, you
No,
know.
don't have a baby.
Yeah, no.
So
That's pretty funny.
We've all
you
had
are old
some,
enough to have a baby.
Yeah, I don't.
We've
That
all
was
had
your age.
we've all had some kind of experience on edibles
don't.
on here. There's, I do, even with smoking certain strains, but eating too much edibles. What happens to me, and it just happened to a friend of mine, and you want to tell him what happens to me when
Oh my gosh. Yes. He can't even control himself. It's like he's having a seizure. His whole body is shaking and shivering. And the first time it happened, we were out. We had come from a show, and we stopped at a local bar where they play live music, and we knew the band that was playing, and they had been on a break. And so as we were getting out of our car, the lead singer and guitar player of that band was walking alongside the building and approached us and was just looking very perplexed at Mr. Weedman, because he was like holding his hands to his chest and shivering, and it was the middle of summer.
It's like
He's
90
like,
degrees outside.
Dude, you all right? And I didn't know what was going on at all. This was like a very new thing to me, because up until about that time, Weedman hadn't really smoked in front of me, so I hadn't experienced this yet. This was a first, and so I'm like, did my husband do drugs or something when I wasn't looking? What is wrong with him? So then this guy walks up and he's like, dude, you all right? And there's Weedman shaking and shivering, and he's like, yeah, I'm fine, man. Just gonna go in and have a beer. I'm like,
I
what?
ate too much brownie.
Yeah, I was completely embarrassed. I didn't even know what was going on. And then he kept saying, all I did, I had too much weed. I had too much weed. And I'm like, okay. But I was like second guessing it. And then I experienced it firsthand, like being with him in the moment, smoked the weed, and then got the shivers. And
Yeah, I
it's
ate
like,
a brownie.
ah.
I ate too much brownie. And what
Yeah,
happens
yeah.
is my blood pressure drops. Certain strains do that to me. And I know if I smoke too much. And I know this happens to other people. I just talked to a guy who asked me the same question. He goes, hey, I've heard you talk about this before. I'm like, yes, because you smoke too much, it drops your blood pressure and you get the chills. My mind is still there. I'm not like sloppy or fucked up or laying on the floor.
Just a little chilly.
Just a little chilly. You know, that's it.
But your
And it
whole
happens.
body shivers.
Yes, my whole body shivers.
And
that
you can't
happens,
stop it.
Right, but it happens more on edibles than it does on smoking. It does. Especially if I take too much edibles. If I take a 25 milligram, I get the shakes. Shake, shake, shake. Shake, shake, shake. Shake my body. That's what edibles do to me. There's 5 things to do to fix that, though. And I've always talked about this with people, was get some juice, orange juice, or lemonade, or something with sugar in it, because that'll get the blood flowing again. It'll open up your blood and get you going. Try to stay calm. This is a good one, right?
Yeah.
Just relax. Know that it is the edible or the cannabis you took. Know that you took too much.
Yeah, that's like any level of too much. Like, just calm down. Like, you aren't dying. You are breathing. Your heart is pounding.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Like,
yeah.
Close your eyes,
Yeah.
lay down for a minute, and take some deep breaths. You're gonna be all right.
Relax, stay calm. You're not gonna die. You might have a little bit increased heart rate, or your heart rate might go down. You might feel paranoid, which we talked about, just your brain trying to figure some shit out. It's you might have some mild hallucinations. I've had some hallucinations by smoking too much cannabis. That I do like about it, though. So take a bath, watch your favorite movie, try going to sleep. Make sure it's cool in your room, because you don't want to sweat. If it's too hot, you won't be comfortable. Try lighting some incense or scented candles if you don't have your senses are that heightened.
They suggest take a bath.
Yeah.
That surprises me. Because
Yeah.
what if you had like a heavy indica and then you're like too high and you go take a bath and then you get sleepy?
Make sure Mrs. Weedman is right next to you.
I say I challenge that.
Well, take a hot bath or take a hot shower.
Soak your feet.
There you go. Soak your feet's a good one. Eat some sweets. Something sweet. Hydrate. Lemonade. Orange juice. Eat some sweet candy. One I didn't know about, and maybe I did, but maybe I just didn't really ever want to try it. Eat black pepper seeds.
Oh, I heard that.
Maybe I did. I just don't remember because I'm pretty stoned.
I just hide under 5 blankets with 3 sweaters and wait for it to be over.
I've heard go for long walks. The cool breeze always does well. Running if you can, or go for a jog or do some exercise. The one thing I've talked about this not only just on podcasts before, but to people, if you have a straight CBD strain.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, the CBD reverses the effect of the THC, and it's the antidote. So it'll fight a full strain of CBD, not a 2-to-1 or any kind of ratio. You want a full CBD because it'll reverse the effects. And you've seen that happen to me.
Mm-hmm. And
I was I was doing like a bong off with an old buddy of mine, and we were ripping bongs, and I was baked beyond all belief. And I remember I had that CBD with me, and I packed it. Next thing you know, I was turned to O-Dog, and I went, I'm better. I'm ready to go.
I died that night.
we were pretty
You
high.
just rambled on in the car. Almost I was tweaking out in the back seat.
Maybe it was a good thing I was rambling on.
No, I was getting in a loophole. Scaring me.
Well, you got Mrs. Weedman, you got anything else to say?
No.
No? O-Dog, hope to get you back on the podcast again. You got anything to say?
Nope.
Nope. Well, I want to thank all of our listeners out there. Appreciate you very much. You can catch us on Instagram at WEEDMAN420 Chronicles, on our Twitter at WEEDMAN420Pod. Send us a DM. Send us a note if you want to talk about some things on the podcast. We will. Also, send us an email at WEEDMAN420Chronicles@gmail.com if you got anything to say. And then also you can listen to our podcast on all platforms. And I want to thank our almost 9,000 downloads.
Sweet.
In over 1,000 cities now. About 100 and something countries. So thank you for all listening.
Share with your friends.
Sharing is caring.
Like Paulie always says, smoke smart, puff, puff, and away.
Bye.